Well, Harvard's President Claudine Gay is back in the spotlight this week after her train wreck testimony on anti-Semitism, which James talked about last week on the show. A probe launched by Harvard found instances of plagiarism in her academic writings. Well, but the university is still backing her. Joining us now to discuss it, and again, a favourite on this show, for our final show of the year, President of the Centre of the American Experiment, John Hinderaker. John, great to see you as always. This is our last show of the year. Thank you for coming on. What did you make of what's happening at Harvard and the plagiarism allegations?
Well, Rowan, Claudine Gay obviously did engage in plagiarism. What she would do is she would copy an entire paragraph from somebody else's work, and then she would change two words without using quotation marks. And that is specifically called out as plagiarism in Harvard's rules. Nevertheless, the university's Board of Overseers said they have actually been investigating this since October, something they had not let on publicly until now. And they have absolved Claudine Gay of any serious misdeed. She's going to proactively, they said, make 4 corrections in her articles and move on. There won't be any punishment. And of course, it's not proactive when you wait until you get caught, to make just a very modest number of corrections.
And what Sorry, John. And how does this play into the, her not being fired for basically refusing to condemn any kind of, chants of anti-Semitic chants, genocide to the Jews, and so on?
They're closely related, Rowan, because there's a broader point here. If you read Claudine Gay's speeches and her writings, as president of Harvard, she is not a distinguished scholar at all. She has published only 11 articles, not original work. They're all on race and politics, apparently the only thing that she cares about. But if you read what she says, she thinks that her mission is to transform Harvard from an intellectual institution to an activist organization. And what we're seeing here is that Harvard's Board of Overseers is on board with this transformation. That is why they hired Claudine Gay as president, even though she is not at all a distinguished academic. And so we're seeing here a formerly great institution moving down this path of committing itself to left-wing activism. And of course, the whole, Hamas-Israel situation right into that.
Well,
James.
John, what I'm finding absolutely fascinating here is the way in which she's almost been excused. It feels like mostly peaceful plagiarism here is the way the media has been covering it. But what I want to ask you about, though, is I think back in 2006, Larry Summers was president of Harvard. He was a distinguished scholar, a distinguished economist, former secretary of the Treasury, former chief economist, I think, at the World Bank, author of a number of books, papers, hugely distinguished career. He was summarily discharged because he gave a speech in which he suggested that there may be differences in the structure of male and female brains, which explain why some go into some areas and some others. He was roundly criticized, cashiered by Harvard. This here, as you say, Claudine Gay, not much chop of an academic, and she's allowed to stay. How does Harvard have any credibility anymore? And what is the end game for Harvard if it is just, how does it continue to attract and remain a credentialing institution if its sole credential is DEI nonsense?
Well, James, you're absolutely right. The difference between Larry Summers and Claudine Gay is ideology. Larry Summers didn't toe the left-wing line. Claudine Gay, even though she's not much of an academic, does toe the left-wing line. You ask a great question, though. Harvard has said that it is going to stop taking SAT scores from high school student applicants. So how is it going to pick a freshman class if it doesn't use the SATs, and almost every senior in high school in America has a 4.0 grade average? It's going to choose them according to essays they write, and they're going to judge those essays based on how closely they hew to the DEI line. And I think that where that leads, James, is to a steep decline in Harvard's prestige.
100%, Liz.
Absolutely. John, this week we learned that the Democrat mayor in Boston has sent out an email inviting people to a Christmas party unless you're white. 15 minutes later, she sent out another very hurried email, not to apologise for her segregation party, but to apologise for the fact that it was accidentally sent to some whites.
Yeah, it's a revealing story, Liz. I mean, the Boston City Council has 7 white members and 6 members of color, as they say. And Michelle Wu only intended to invite the 6 members of color to a bigger party that she was having at a city facility for what they call electeds of color. And she accidentally invited the white people that had to back off and say, "Oh, sorry, you're not invited after all." But again, there's a bigger story here. Some people in defending this said, well, this is nothing new. This group called the Electeds of Color has been around for more than a decade. And they have all kinds of events, for electeds of color. This is just one of them. And there's a couple of things about that. Number one, I'm not sure why anybody would want to have a Christmas party that is racially segregated. That just seems like a very strange thing to do. But the second thing, Liz, is that we are seeing increasing acceptance of segregation in the United States. We see it in instances like this. We see it in universities having segregated dormitories, segregated commencement ceremonies. It's just astonishing, for somebody who lived through the entire era of integration.
John Hinderaker, always great to chat to you. I hope that there will be plenty of coloureds and whites Christmas parties that you'll be attending there in the States. But in the meantime, a very Merry Christmas to you and your family. Thank you so much for coming on during the year. And we'll see you again next year, John. And as I said, I'm not going to say the American Happy Holidays because I hate that. Have a very Merry Christmas, John Hinderaker from Outsiders. Thanks, mate.